What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Q&A live on how to use tracks in worship. I'm coming to you from the Loop Community Studios in downtown Chicago. Our office is about right there. And we're live from the studios today. And we're going to be doing a unique live stream today. We're going to be taking completely random, off-the-cuff, live questions on how to use tracks in worship. And so if you're watching this on YouTube, Facebook, welcome. We're glad you're here. In the comment box, as we're going through this, if you have any question at all about leading worship, about using tracks in worship, technology, anything in that category, type it into the comment box and we'll be taking questions live. I would love to be able to answer your questions live about how to use tracks in worship. I'm the founder of loopcommunity.com and I'm a worship leader. I've been leading worship for most of my life. I've been using tracks for a large portion of my life, for the past 20 years or so. And this is a subject that I'm just really passionate about because I love leading worship and I love technology and I love what tracks have done to the leading worship landscape. It has made leading worship in so many ways easier, and also really helps prepare your band and makes them feel comfortable, helps the sound of your band. I just think it's awesome what you're able to do with technology if you put it to use. And so that's why I started Loop Community and why we're doing this class today, because I love teaching worship leaders about how to do this. Because I know that when you first get started, it can seem complicated, it can seem complex, tricky, and it's actually a lot easier than most people think. All you have to do is just dive in. It's kind of like learning to ride a bike. Once you just start going, it just feels natural. And you'll probably look back and be like, wow, I can't believe I haven't used tracks up until now. It's one of those things, it's just like, it seems scary at first, but then once you do it, you're like, oh man, I should have been doing this whole time. And I think that'll be your experience if you're brand new to tracks. But I know there's people that are watching this too that have been using tracks for a long time. And so if you have any questions at all, type them into the comment box on YouTube, on Facebook right now. And also, a really cool thing we're doing today is we're going to give away a track rig. One of these guys. This is the 8-channel output interface for running tracks that Loop Community developed. And we're going to be giving one away today in this live show. So the way that you can enter to win that track rig is by typing in a question in the comment box. Also, we know there's probably a lot of people too that don't even know this video is happening because there's a million videos happening at once at all times. Why not, if you hit the share button, also like let other worship leaders know that this is happening. Hit the share button on YouTube, on Facebook, and let others know. And we're going to be taking questions. So we're going to take our very first question of the day, and it is from Jack on YouTube. And the question is, how do I use my own tracks in Prime? All right, that's a really great question, Jack, and that's a question we get a lot. And so let's go and look at the computer. I'm going to show you how you do this. The way to use your own tracks in Prime is we're going to actually, we're going to pull up Loop Community, okay? And we're going to click on the upload button in the top right corner. There's a little icon with a cloud. I'm going to click on that cloud upload button. And now this lets you upload any audio you want to use inside of Prime. Now you'll see two buttons here. There's one that says personal use and one that says sell. Now you would only want to press sell if you're an approved producer with Loop Community and you want to sell tracks publicly on Loop Community. That's not at all what Jack is asking here. Jack is asking, how do you use your own tracks inside of Prime? So in this case, you want to choose personal use because we're going to use the track for our own personal use inside of Prime. This meter down here shows you how much storage space you have. All Loop Community members get 300 megabyte for free, which is actually a lot because when these tracks are all compressed in the cloud, they're pretty small. You could probably upload, 5 songs to get started. If you want to get more space, you can always go to Pro Features and subscribe and pay for more storage. We actually have a plan right here called Cloud Starter, which gives you 5 gigs for $5 a month, which 5 gigs is a ton. That's actually going to give you like room for a lot of songs. So that's, I would just start there, and you can always upgrade later. But anyways, you're going to click here and say, it says drag your file on the screen, or click here to browse for a file. So let's go ahead and find a file to upload. I'm going to go to, where am I going to go? Where do I have my tracks? I'm going to go to, okay, and I'm going to choose a track. Just find any sort of audio file that you have. Okay, so I've got, well, you know what we need to do? We need to actually compress. So you need to find an audio, like audio that you want to upload. Okay, so let's go ahead and find it. And it has to be in a zip file. So let's go to Finder here, and we're going to go to my folder where I've got all my tracks. Okay, and let's find a track like Glorious Day. Okay, and let's just say that you're wanting to upload Glorious Day. Actually, let's find a smaller file just because it's going to take a while to upload. So I'm going to do this split track, and we're going to do click, cues, and stereo. So you find your audio files that you want to upload. And I'm sorry, Jack, I keep changing my mind on this, but I really want this example to be accurate for what you would maybe do. So let's just do Glorious Day, okay, 110 D. Let's just choose which files we're going to upload. We're going to upload the click, the cues, the acoustic, and the bass. But you know, you could do a lot more than that if you wanted to. I'm going to right click and just choose compress, and we're going to compress those audio files. It's going to create a zip file of those tracks, okay? And we're going to call this Glorious Day Custom. You know, you can call it whatever you want. I'm going to type in 110 D so that I know the tempo of the song and the key of the song. And now let's go ahead and drag this over here to this window. Where's our zip file? Drag it, and it's going to upload. Now it's going to take a little bit. While it's uploading, though, you can just press the continue button, and you can start filling out information for the song. So I'm going to call this Glorious Day, and we'll call it Custom Upload. You can call it whatever you want. And the artist will actually just use my name, Matt McCoy. The BPM was 110, so I'm going to type that in. The time signature is 4/4 of that song, and the key is in the key of D. I could also upload custom album artwork if I want to do that. Now I can't hit continue here until the previous step is done. So let's go back and look. It's still uploading, so this is going to take a while. Hopefully not too long. It's probably because we're live streaming here. And then I'm going to be able to hit the continue button once that's done uploading. So let's wait for a second. While we're waiting on that, let's go ahead and take a question from Bethany on YouTube that says, can you explain the process of implementing tracks at a small or medium church that has never used tracks? What hardware do we need? How to get worship team on board with it, etc. Great question, Bethany. So this is a question we get a lot because churches are like, how do we even get going with this? What do you need? Okay, I would say keep it very simple. All you need, all right, is an iPhone or an iPod or an iPad. I would recommend getting an iPad. I mean, but honestly, all these would work. An iPhone would work, an iPad would work, or a Mac. Get one of those 3 devices. You probably have one at your church. And if you don't, someone on your team does, I'm sure. Get one of these devices, okay, and install Loop Community Prime. That's the app. I'm actually going to show you this in a little bit. Loop Community Prime is a free app that you can get on the App Store, and it makes running tracks super easy. You can set up set lists, run all your tracks from the app, and it's just very easy to use. All right, I would not bother with something like Ableton Live if you're just getting started. Look at Loop Community Prime. We designed it specifically for worship leaders and for churches of that size too. It's just very easy to use. Any worship volunteer could do it. So download the app. It's a free app. Then you can purchase tracks from Loop Community and use them in the app to run your tracks. I would recommend that you just keep it simple, okay? I wouldn't even start using interfaces and all that stuff. All you need to get is a little headphone cable that maybe we can even post the link in here for you so you can find it. On Amazon, you can get a headphone cable that goes to 2 1/4-inch cables, and you come out of your iPad or out of your Mac into your sound system. And actually, let me show you a diagram of what I'm talking about. So it would look like this. Here is your iPad, okay? You're gonna come out of your iPad into a headphone cable that splits to 2 1/4-inch. 1 1/4-inch is the clicking cues, which has your click that keep everybody in time. And then the other 1/4-inch are the actual tracks, and that's what your audience is gonna hear, the backing tracks. And you send those tracks to your soundboard, and you start treating your tracks as another instrument in your band. You tell your sound team to turn it up because people need to hear it. And then you get the clicking cues to your band, however you need to do that. So really, to get started with tracks, this is all you need, what's seen on this screen. You need the app, you need to buy the tracks, then you just need this headphone cable, which you can get for like $8, going into 2 1/4 direct boxes, which these are like what you would plug your guitar into or your keyboard. Get some direct boxes, which you probably have some at your church already, and then get into the soundboard. And you're good to go. You can run tracks just with that basic setup. To get your worship team on board, I would recommend, instead of just doing it right out of the gate, bring it to a rehearsal, all right? Bring it to a rehearsal and be like, hey, here is something we want to try, and play along with just one song. Don't do a whole set list. Just try one song, and then just let the band and the worship team come to their own conclusion, because I really think that if you do it right, if you implement it and you try it, and everybody gets through the song on the track and they heard that little guide voice say verse 2, 3, 4, I bet you more often than not the band is going to leave being like, let's do that again. Let's keep doing that. That's so much easier. They're going to like they may at first push back against the click because they might think it's annoying. But the more you do it, the more the click actually disappears. It kind of just starts fading into the background. When I lead worship, I don't even really hear the click. I mean, you hear it, but you don't pay attention to it. But you hear those little cue voices and they guide you through the song, make it a ton easier for your worship band, and the tracks are going to help your band sound better and more full. And I would be very surprised if the band's like, let's not do that again. They'll be like, let's keep doing that. So I would try it with one song. Another tip to make sure your band doesn't revolt against tracks is do not use tracks that take the place of one of the band members on your team. So for example, if you have an electric guitar player, do not use electric guitar tracks. If you do, that is a sure way to make them very upset and revolt against using tracks. Another example, if you have a piano player and they're actually playing piano, not like pads and synths and like that. If you have a piano player, do not use a piano track. That is a sure way of making a piano player completely complain about using tracks. So only use tracks and stems that are going to enhance and come around the band you've already got. That is a huge key. I feel like the main thing, when I hear worship teams complain about tracks, it's because they're being replaced by a track, or they're competing with a track. And tracks are never supposed to replace or compete with real band members. They're supposed to enhance what you're already doing. So that's a great question, Bethany, and that was a very long-winded answer, but I appreciate your question. Let's go back real quick to Jack, because I think that our track is probably finished uploading. Okay, let's go back and check. 100%, cool. Let's hit continue. We're gonna hit continue. And what it's gonna do now is it's gonna unzip that audio file, and it analyzed the audio file, and we could press play to listen to it. You can rename your stems. These are the stems we uploaded. All right, it auto names them actually, just because it looked at the file name. So you could change these if you want. You know, I could add 2 to the end. I can hit continue, and it says, great, you're done. I can click submit track, and now that track has been uploaded to my Prime account, and I can always go see it by clicking up here in the top right corner and choosing Prime Cloud. Go to Prime Library, and there it is, Glorious Day Custom Upload. I can always delete that track if I don't want it anymore. I can edit the track details if I typed things in wrong. But let's go to Prime and see if it's there. So I'm going to click on Add Song. And if I go to my cloud uploads here, this shows you all of the audio files that I've uploaded into Prime. And here it is, Glorious Day Custom Upload. And I can click it and download it and now use that custom audio inside of Prime. And here it is. Now there's no section markers. Now, because there was no way for us to be able to tell Prime where those sections are. So you can add them inside of Prime by just going to Edit, Edit Markers. And this gives you a grid where you can zoom in. You can play the audio if you want to.
Intro 2, 3, 4.
All right. And I could double click and add those section markers. So here's the intro. Click Add. Let's go over here. Let's see what this one is.
Verse 2.
There's the verse. I'm going to double click right here. So I would listen through the song and just start adding your section markers. Now the great thing about doing this is that once you have section markers added, you can hit save and they're going to always save to the song. But once you have section markers, now you can use features in Prime like looping sections or custom arrangements. So that's how you would upload your own custom audio into Prime. That's a great feature of Loop Community. You can use any audio that you want. Things you downloaded from any site or audio that you made, you can upload it and use it inside of Prime. All right, we've got another question. This one's coming from Oscar on Facebook. He says, hey Matt, what tips can you share as far as transitioning from one song to the next while waiting for the click and song to start? All right, so we're talking about transitions in Prime. And what tips can you share to make those transitions smooth? So what I like to do is make sure that those transitions are very tight. You do not want a lot of empty space because we all know that in worship, those transitions in songs, a 5-second transition can feel like 10 seconds. It's really weird how that happens. Now, I actually think that for the worship leader, it feels longer than I think what actually is perceived by the congregation. So you kind of have to have a little bit of self-awareness on that one. But the key, though, is to make sure that those transitions are tight. So let me show you how I would maybe do a transition inside of Prime. Let's just say we're going to come out of, let's find 2 songs here. We're going to come out of Reckless Love, and we're going to go into Oh Praise the Name. All right, so let's go ahead and just drag these right next to each other. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on crossfade inside of Prime, which is by clicking the flow icon right here till you get the crossfade icon. And let's go and just test this out. Let's go and press play and see what it sounds like.
In 3, 4, 5, 6. Intro 2, 3, 4.
Okay, so that crossfade was actually pretty good. I mean, I didn't have to make any sort of changes. Let me check something on this. I think that maybe, yeah, I had already adjusted it. So the end time is what we're going to actually be fixing here. This is what it would have sounded like if I wouldn't have already done it. Let's go ahead and press play.
In 3, 4, 5, 6.
Awkward, right? We could tighten
Intro
that up a little
2,
bit. I would
3,
tighten that up
4.
by just changing the end time on Reckless Love. So let's go to Reckless Love, and right here, down here at the bottom, there's a section that you can click on this box that says end time. And let's just go and bring this back by like 5 seconds, okay? And now, listen to how much smoother this, basically what that did is it set a section of where the crossfade is going to start for the next song. So I pulled it back to 5:25. Let's go and press play.
In 3, 4, 5, 6.
So now the crossfade
Intro
starts
2,
right away
3, 4.
to eliminate any sort of awkward gap in between that. Now what I would have told my band is probably like when we hit the ending of that song, go ahead and just like crash out on the cymbals. So that when we're going into the next song, 1, 2, 3, everybody's in. All right. So that's one way you can eliminate those awkward transitions. I would make sure too that if, let's just say Living Hope had, or sorry, Oh Praise the Name had too long of an intro here, you could cut the intro if you wanted to go right into the verse. That would be another way you could do. Just go to Edit Arrangement and just right-click on the intro and hit Delete Section. All right? And that way you could just go right into the beginning of Oh Praise the Name.
3, 4, 5,
Just cut the
6.
intro entirely.
Verse 2, 3, 4.
Right? And then you're just right into Praise the Name. That would be another way to do it. Now, you'd want to make sure you practice that so you know what key you're going into and all that kind of thing. But that's a way to make those transitions less awkward. Thanks for that question. All right, next question is from Ryan on YouTube. He says, "Hi, Loop. I recently used your tracks last week in church for the first time. It was amazing." That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Just wondering, why would I need a track rig when I could mix everything within the Prime app? Really, really good question. Let's go back and look at this diagram. So when you mix the tracks in Prime, and he's saying like, if you bring the drums down and, you kind of make the mix of the stems how you want it to sound. Now, if you're just doing it with this audio setup, you're sending the sound team just one audio send. And that one audio send has the full mix. Everything. It has, everything that's coming from Prime, it's coming down one audio track. And so your sound team on the mixer just has it all in one fader, which means they turn it all up or they turn it all down. And that's fine, I guess, if you've really practiced with it and if the sound team knows what to expect. But if the sound team was like, hey, you know what? For this song in particular, we really want to turn the shaker up. Or we want to turn that synth lead line up or down. Well, they couldn't do that. They would have to turn everything down, but that would affect all the tracks. It would affect the pads and the synths and everything else that Prime is sending. Well, with a track rig, you could actually send out each instrument out of its own output. It would look like something like this. All right, just pretend this is Prime or Ableton. So you come into Track Rig, and now you have the option of sending 8 different channels to your sound team. So they would have 8 different faders that they could adjust the volume of the different instruments. So they could turn up the shaker. They could turn down the synth part. They could turn up the guitars. They could turn down the bass. And they could have full control. And I think that really helps mix-wise. The more that things are isolated on a soundboard, the better. Because then the sound team can EQ certain things. That's another big thing. Tambourines sometimes can really sound harsh. And if you're just sending everything down one mix, they can't. If they try to EQ the tracks for the tambourines, it's going to affect everything. You're EQing the pads and all the other tracks. Where if you're sending them 8 different channels and the tambourines are on their own, the sound team can EQ and adjust the levels of the tambourine on their own. That's a huge benefit of using Track Rig. This gives you 8 outputs. You plug this in just via USB to your iPad, to your Mac, to your phone, whatever. And in Prime, it gives you 8 different outputs that you can send your tracks. Now, people ask too, well, what tracks would you recommend sending? I have been using Track Rig, obviously, since it came out, and I've only maybe once used all 8. Usually, I use 4 to 6. And that's really honestly because the churches that I've been leading worship at had limitations on how many XLR cables they could send me. But I think typically most churches use 4 to 6. And here's how I would do it. Inside of Prime, this is how I would route tracks. So let's just look at Oh Praise the Name. I would click on Devices. You choose Loop Community Track Rig if it's plugged in. Then you click this Outs button. This is going to let you choose which outputs on Track Rig each channel goes out of. So right now the acoustic is going out of channel 2 on the Track Rig. You can click this to cycle through and you can go through all 8. So 1 through 8. So what I would do is I like sending let's just start at the clicking cues. I send the clicking cues out output 1. All right. I'm not using vocals, so I'm going to turn those down. And actually, maybe let's just start there. Let's just eliminate what we're not using. I'm not going to use acoustic, not using vocals, not using bass or drums. I'm using electrics, and that's it. We're going to use this. So it's going to sound like this. Those are all the tracks I'm sending. I like sending electrics out channel 4. So those are going to go out channel 4. My pads, I send keys and pads out channel 3. Shakers are going to go out channel 2. Strings, I'll send those with the keys just because, channel 3. Synth bass out channel 3. And the tambourine, I'm going to send it with the shaker out channel 2. So I do 4 usually. I do clicking cues on channel 1, electrics channel, shakers, tams out channel 2, keys out channel 3, and guitars, electric guitars out channel 4. I love sending guitars out their own. Guitars specifically, I think, are key for sound teams to be able to control on their own, because they can really adjust the guitar for like the lead parts and stuff like that to really help fill out the sound. So I love sending guitars out separate, shakers out separate. I mean, gosh, I like sending it all out separate. It's amazing. So I would highly recommend TrackRig for that reason. That's a huge bonus. But that's how you set the outputs inside of Prime. Now, right now you have to do that for every individual song, which doesn't take long, and it saves to your Prime Cloud settings. So once you've done it, it's done. But you do have to do it individual songs. We are working on features eventually where you can actually set buses, and they're all auto-mapped for you. That's coming, so stay tuned on that. Anyways, thanks for that question, Ryan. That's awesome. Next question from David on YouTube. How do you connect a looptimus or a looptimus mini with the Prime app if it's being used back by the media booth, but the looptimus is up on the stage? That's a good question. So that's a really good question. If you've got Prime being run at the back of the media booth and you want the looptimus to be on stage, well, what you would need is, there was at one point a wireless MIDI transmitter called the Puck, P-U-C, I think is how you spell it. Let's actually look it up. I think it's called the Puck Plus. All right, here it is. You can actually buy them on eBay. You might even be able to get it still on Amazon. Look at this. Here it is on Amazon. This is a wireless transmitter that we've used before actually for this case, and you can actually basically make your looptimus wireless. You plug it into the back of looptimus, and it sends a wireless signal to connect to Prime. So that would be the way that I would do it right now. That's probably the best way to do it. The other way you could do it is you could actually use, it depends how far away your stage is. You could use a MIDI cable going about 50 feet, but I would not go farther than that. All right. You could also use a powered USB cable. Which you can buy on Amazon. It's like a signal booster. Now, again, I wouldn't go too far on these, but this is also a potential possibility, is maybe try this 50-foot powered signal booster USB cable. Now, I would not recommend that you're powering your looptimus by the USB. If you're going to do this situation, then you should for sure plug your looptimus in with a 9-volt adapter, because you want to save as much juice as possible over that USB cable if you're going that far. So power your looptimus with a 9-volt adapter, then use something like this to get your looptimus across stage. So depends how big your room is, but I would look at the Puck Plus. It's a really cool device. All right, thanks for that question. Very interesting question. Question from Michael on Facebook. My worship leaders feel that tracks lock them into a set pattern of the song. What's the best way to help them and the band feel more comfortable repeating verses and choruses? It's a great question, Michael. So one of the awesome things about Prime is that you can be completely flexible. So first of all, I would reassure your worship pastor that actually you're not locked in. So don't worry about that. And they'd be like, well, what do you mean? And so two ideas here. One is like, you could say, well, if you're wanting to do another chorus, if you decide last minute that you're going to do 3 choruses instead of 2 on "Oh Praise the Name," actually let's use a different song just because I changed the outputs on that. Let's do Cornerstone. Let's say you're like, last minute, we're going to do 2 choruses of Cornerstone. In rehearsal, you decide. You're like, hey, well, we can just edit the arrangement. Double click, add another chorus. And boom, you've got another chorus. Now, that's just if you made the decision in the rehearsal. Because the click and cues update and everything, it's awesome. It duplicated the chorus, and it gives you
Chorus 2,
the click
3,
and cues as well.
4.
But if they're like, yeah, but no, but I mean, now we're locked into doing 2. What if I only want to do 1? Well, you could say, okay, well, actually, if we're actually in the worship set, and you're like, we want to do, after this chorus, we don't want to do the chorus anymore. We can just click the outro.
Outro 2, 3, 4.
And it just skipped that second chorus we added. Let's just say you're like, hey, you know what? After this, we're like, let's do another chorus. Let's click on chorus.
Chorus 2, 3, 4.
And now we're back on the chorus. So your worship leader, you should show them that actually the tracks could follow them as long as they know where they're going, So if they're like, okay, we want to go back to the verse here.
Chorus 2,
Click on
3,
verse. Here we go.
4.
Now I clicked it too late, so there wasn't enough time to actually say the right cue. But if I would have clicked it earlier, it would have given us the right cue. So you can be completely spontaneous with this. Let's just say you're in the intro, and let's say you're in this little turn, okay? And you're like, we just want to keep doing
Chorus
this.
2, 3.
You can click the repeat button, all right, right
4.
down here. Let me zoom in so I can see it.
Turn 2, 3, 4.
We can just click repeat, and it's going to
Turn
repeat
2,
that section
3,
over and over
4.
and over and over and over. If you guys are just jamming on it,
Turn 2,
you can
3,
just click the
4.
repeat button, and it's going to repeat that section over and over and over until you disengage it.
Chorus 2,
Now it's going to go into the
3,
chorus.
4.
I think the repeat, I think that more likely than not, worship leaders want to repeat sections than completely randomly jump somewhere else. Like, I doubt, most worshipers I think aren't going to just jump from like the last chorus all the way back to the verse 1. Usually it's like, hey, let's do that chorus again, let's do that bridge again. And in that case, you could use just the repeat function in Prime. So what I would say for your worship leader, I would get them one of these controllers. This is the Looptimus Mini. It's a tiny 3-button foot switch. The reason I would get this for the worship leader is because the worship leader is the one that's telling you that they want to go somewhere last minute. And how are they going to let you know that? You could have them like give you a hand signal like chorus, and then whoever's running tracks can then hit the repeat button. Or like this is a common like repeat, like, hey, let's repeat it. And if the worship leader gave you that signal, then the person who's running tracks should just hit the repeat button. That works too. But I would say, why not just give them the control? Throw this controller up by the worship leader. They don't have to run all the tracks. You could still run the tracks. But give them a controller that when they want to repeat a section, they could press a button for repeat. All right, so watch this. I'm going to plug this in. Let's just say you're running the tracks back by the drummer, all right? But you run this up by the worship leader, and this is their like repeat control. I'm going to click on MIDI. We're going to erase all MIDI mappings just so we can be clear here. And I'm just going to click on the repeat button, and we're going to make it this button right here. And now drop this controller down by the worship leader. And now they have control. If whenever they press this button, they can repeat any section of a song. So let's just say, here you are, you're in the chorus. This is the really nice first chorus of Cornerstone. And the worship leader's really feeling it. And they decide, we're going to do it again.
Chorus 2,
They press the
3,
button.
4,
and it goes back into the chorus again. So give the control to the worship leader, and I think that alone will blow their mind, and they'll realize that actually tracks can follow them. They don't have to follow the tracks. So that's a great question, Michael. Thanks for that. All right, next question. We've got a question from a friendo. Does Prime have MIDI out capabilities to cue lighting and lyrics? Prime does have MIDI out capabilities. Let me go ahead and show you that. So what we're going to do is with a Loop Pro plan, you can do that. You can have MIDI out. And so on Cornerstone here, if I click on Edit MIDI cues, I can actually double click anywhere on the timeline and add a MIDI cue. So I can send a MIDI note, a MIDI message, and send it over a network to control lyric software or lighting. You can send MIDI cues, you can send MIDI notes, program changes, control changes. And when Prime runs across this marker like this, it's gonna send that MIDI message and change our lyric slides. Let me show you how I would do that. We're going to use something called, we'll use ProPresenter for this example, but you know, it would work the same with like Proclaim or Presenter. So I've got a song here for Living Hope, and we're going to go ahead and trigger these slides to be automatic. All you have to do is let's go to ProPresenter and go to Preferences, go to General. It's pretty easy to set up, but there's some steps you got to take. Go to Devices. And I'm going to hit delete on this one because I'd already set that one up. And click the plus sign and choose MIDI. And now I can actually go ahead and choose my MIDI source. Now Prime doesn't show up here. So the way we need to get Prime to show up is what we're going to do is we're going to go to Audio MIDI Setup. This is on your Mac. And go to Window, go to Show MIDI Studio. And we're going to click in the top right corner, this little globe icon. And usually there's nothing here, so I'm going to hit delete. And what you're going to do is you press the plus button to create a session. And we're going to call this, and this is if you're on 2 different computers across the room, okay? So if you're running ProPresenter on the back computer, you're going to create a session. You're going to connect those devices to the same MIDI network. So your Prime device on stage needs to be connected to the same wireless network as your ProPresenter computer. Connect them to the same network, then create a session here and change this to who can connect to you, anybody. All right. And we're going to close this out. And now under right here, settings, I'm going to go ahead and close out ProPresenter and actually relaunch this. Because you have to rescan basically for those networks. Go to General, go to Devices, Settings. Here it is, Session 1. We're going to choose Session 1 as the source. That's where it's listening for MIDI information. And then in Prime, all you have to do is change this MIDI cues connections to be Network Session 1. So these cues are sending out over MIDI Network Session 1, and ProPresenter is receiving those MIDI cues in MIDI Session 1. Now, if you're on the same computer, though, you cannot use the MIDI network driver right here. So we're going to just delete that. If you're using the same computer, you're going to use something called the IAC driver. We're going to double click on it and just choose Devices Online to turn it on. Okay. And we're going to click the plus sign to turn on bus 1 for the IAC driver. The IAC driver is basically acting as a bridge or a connection between 2 apps. And it's going to send the MIDI information over these 2 apps. So just turn on the IAC driver, bus 1, we got that turned on. Let's go to Prime, and we're going to go to Prime Settings, and we're going to change this MIDI cues connections to be the IAC bus driver. So now Prime is going to send out MIDI information over the IAC driver. And let's go to ProPresenter, and let's go ahead and change that again. Now, unfortunately, with ProPresenter, I don't know, it's just kind of an annoying thing with ProPresenter. You have to relaunch it for it to rescan all the MIDI availabilities. But let's go to MIDI devices, click settings, and there's bus 1. We're going to turn on the source for that. Click back, choose connect. Now, to know what you need to send for ProPresenter to change information, you're going to click on MIDI map. And this shows you all the different MIDI messages that ProPresenter can receive to do things inside of ProPresenter. So if you want to go to the next slide, you send MIDI note 12. If you want to go to the previous slide, you go to MIDI, you send MIDI note 13. If you want to send a specific slide number, you're going to send MIDI note 19, and the velocity of that MIDI note is going to be the slide number. All right, so if I want to go to slide number 50, I'm going to send MIDI note 19, and the velocity is going to be at 50, and that'll go to slide 50. So let me show you how this would work, okay? So we're connected. We're going to go to Prime. We're going to go to Living Hope. And I've actually already set these up. Let's go and see if they work, actually. All right, so I'm going to press play.
Verse 2, 3, 4.
There they go. I actually had already preset MIDI note 19 at velocity slide with the slide number. So check it out. I'm automating Prime. Now, I went through that really, really fast. If you want some more detail on that, just go to YouTube and search Loop Community MIDI Out. And we have a video that goes in detail how to do this for different setups. But to answer your question, can Prime do it? Yes. And it's actually very easy to do. You just need some practice, all right? It just takes, you know, just trying it out. There's a few different settings you have to do to make it work. That's it. It's pretty simple. Thanks for that question. MIDI out. You can get it with Loop Pro subscription. All right. Question from Grady. Grady Wiley. Hey, Matt. Do you have any tips for pads and transitional moments without a keys player? The pastor likes to have music under the end of sermons, and a single pad seems stale. Any tips? It's a great question. We actually have a product we're working on right now that is actually going to make this something really cool for this. I can't really talk about it now, but what you're wanting, we're actually working on a product that's going to make that pretty easy. One thing I would recommend, though, and in the meantime, is looking at Prime pads. So I don't know if you've done this before, but just go to loopcommunity.com and search Prime pads. And Loop Community has tons of different pads that you can download and use inside of Prime. I really like, we have some called guitar pads for what you're talking about. Guitar pads kind of have a little bit more movement in them and like guitar swells. So I would check these out. You can download these by just choosing the in-app only. They're only $5, all right? Once you have those, pull them into Prime. I'm gonna click Add Song. I think I have some in my account. Let's see. Yeah, Prime guitar pads. So I'm gonna download these. Hopefully it don't take too long to download on the internet connection here. And they are. So while it's downloading, let's just look at these ones that I already have downloaded. Prime Pads Iceland. And you've got these pads that now you can play inside of Prime. And these pads, what I would do is actually, let's just say your closing song is Oh Praise the Name. All right. And let's actually make this even more interesting. Let's just say the closing song, your pastor wants to actually start with the chorus, which is probably pretty likely. So I'm going to hit Edit Arrangement, and I'm just going to delete the verse, delete this, delete. You know, we're going to start, maybe he's like, hey, let's start on that last chorus. All right. So what I would do is I'm going to put these pads here. I'm going to put them in B flat so we're in the same key. You can just transpose right here in Prime. You can press play to listen to it. Whoops. Let's press play to listen to the pad. You can kind of customize the pad's sound by moving these faders up and down. All right. Turn on crossfade, and what we're going to use is a feature called crossfade on demand. So let's just say your pastor is going to get up and he's going to pray. I would go ahead and press play on these pads. The pad comes in. He's praying. Maybe you're just noodling a little bit on your acoustic. And then when he gets close to saying amen, you know, you can always tell when it's almost over. I'm just gonna press next. When I press next, it's gonna trigger crossfade on demand, which means it's gonna start crossfading right away. So I'm gonna press next. It's starting, oh praise the name.
Chorus 2, 3, 4.
Oh praise the name. Right? And we're right into oh praise the name. Which I set all those outputs weird on this song, so we're not hearing all the tracks really. But that's how I would use a pad for a very smooth transition for after a sermon going into a closing song. Here's those guitar pads if you want to hear them. And then just noodle around on your guitar while that's happening, or like your keyboard can kind of just hang out in the key of C or whatever key you've got it in, and really make those transitions really smooth. So definitely check out guitar pads. All right, we got a question from Ricardo on YouTube. A lot of great questions today, by the way. Thank you guys for your engagement. It's awesome. Hi, how can I connect Prime and use MIDI controls with an iPad? And do I need to pay for a subscription for using MIDI with the iPad? Great question. You do not have to pay for MIDI controls in Prime. Prime, the free version of Prime, comes with MIDI control for free. So you can use any controller, a MIDI controller, to control all aspects inside of Prime. So let's go ahead and look at a song. And let's pull a controller down. We're going to use this one. I've got the looptimus here. This is a looptimus controller that Loop Community designed. It gives you 6 buttons that you can use to map to different things inside of Prime. All you have to do is just plug it in with USB. It'll power up. Looptimus gives you 20 different pages. So you can think of that as like 20 songs. And then each song could have intro, verse, chorus, bridge, outro, and then a global stop button. This controller you can get at looptimus.com. All right, check this out. But watch how easy it is to map. I'm just going to go to MIDI inside of Prime in the top left corner. And anything that you see that has a white box on it can be mapped or assigned to a button on Looptimus. All right, so I could go ahead and make this button the play button. I can make this global stop button right here. I could make this button be next song. I could have this button be previous. I could have this button be repeat. So that would be one way to map it. So I could just go ahead and press play by just pressing the button on Looptimus.
Chorus 2,
I could stop
3,
everything by
4.
pressing the stop button on Looptimus. Go to the next song, you know, if I want, and press play. So you can completely have hands-free
Intro
control
2,
of Prime
3, 4.
by using this device. Now, the possibilities are endless of what you want to map inside of Prime, and that really just comes down to preference of how you want to run tracks. You know, some people want to be really spontaneous, so you could do that. Let's just say we're on this song called After Your Heart, and let's go back to MIDI mapping, and let's just say I want the start of the song to be this button, the verse I want to be this button, the chorus I want to be this button, the bridge is this button, the down chorus is this button. I mean, again, you can make it anything you want. Then, when I press this button, it's going to start the song, and I can jump around to different sections in the song.
Verse
so if I'm like,
2,
hey, let's
3,
go to
4.
let's go to the chorus after this verse. So when the verse is done playing, so when I press to this chorus button, it got the chorus up on deck, ready to go. When it's done playing this section, it's going to jump to the chorus.
Chorus 2, 3, 4.
And it jumped to the chorus. So you can use a controller like this to control anything inside of Prime. The possibilities are endless. If you are interested in those controllers, make sure you go to Loop Community and just check out Looptimus, Looptimus Mini. We've got a couple that we designed specifically for worship leaders. This is the Looptimus that I just showed you. If you just go to our shop, they're right there. Looptimus and Looptimus Mini for this little small controller. Check those out. All right. Question from Edson on YouTube. Hi, is there a way to route the cues and clicks separately? Some of the leaders would only like to have the click without the cues, especially with 6/8 songs where the cue goes up to 6 count. Awesome question. So this is something that I would for sure do if I were like on staff at a church and I had a track rig like set up on stage that it just stays there all the time and it's just plugged in at all times. And if I had like all the outputs and I could use all 8 outputs, like they could send me 8 different sends, I would for sure do this. Because that's a really good point in that sometimes some people need to hear the click louder than others. Some people need to hear the cues louder than others. And so being able to adjust those separately would be key. And it's very easy to do. You just go to Prime, and if you're using track rig like this, what I would do is I would just use output 1 for click, and output 2 would be cues. And then 3 would be your percussion, 4 would be guitars, 5 would be keys, 6 would be whatever else you've got. But yeah, you just send the click and cues separately. So you would need to use a track rig to do this. You just go to outs, and down here, I would make the click 1, the cues would be 2, and then I would change the outputs for all my other instruments to be, guitars down 3, percussion out 4, and so forth, all right? That's the way that I would do that. Be really simple. All you have to do is just change the click and cue outputs right here. But you would need a track rig to do that. If you're using your headphone jack, you couldn't do that as well as use tracks because you would need 3 outputs. You would need click, cues, and then all your tracks. And your headphone jack only has 2 outputs because it's the left and the right signal. So you need to use a track rig to give you multiple outputs. But you can definitely do that, and I think that's a really, really great idea. I would recommend that if you have a track rig and if you have enough open spaces on your soundboard and cables to plug that in, I would actually highly recommend that you do separate the click and cues. Not many people do that, but I think that's a very effective thing to do. So check that out. You guys, that's it for today's live Q&A. We had a lot of really, really great questions. Thank you guys for your engagement. If you guys didn't get your question answered, we want to help you. So make sure you can email us at support@loopcommunity.com. Email us your question at support@loopcommunity.com, and we will get your question answered because we want to help everybody who asks questions. Loop Community is all about helping worship leaders use tracks in worship. And we have a winner. We have a winner to announce for the track rig coming to you. Congratulations to the track rig winner, Oscar Carrios. I think that's how you say your last name. Oscar Carrios on Facebook. You are the winner of the track rig for today's live Q&A. So thank you so much to everybody who participated. I think that what's awesome about it is that your questions help a lot of other worship leaders who are maybe going to rewatch this video later. We're going to use it for little clips to help answer questions, common questions that we get. So thank you guys for asking questions because some of those we maybe wouldn't have thought of. So thank you guys for being a part of today's live Q&A. As always, we're glad you're a part of Loop Community. Subscribe to our YouTube channel right now if you are not already subscribed to stay notified on new videos. And follow us on Facebook. Like this video on YouTube. Let's help a lot of worship leaders see this video. And thank you guys. Hope you have a great weekend leading your church in worship. See you soon.